All right, welcome everybody. I'm excited to welcome Rabbi Frank Muller. Welcome back, Rabbi Frank Muller. He taught us already a couple of months ago, and today's topic is Judaism and the power of love. Rabbi Muller is or was served as a pulpit rabbi for 40 years, and he currently serves, he told me just a minute ago, he's failing retirement. He serves as a rabbinic scholar and director of pastoral care at Temple Shalom in Naples, Florida, as well as being a proud member of a group that call themselves the Altar Rockers, which is a group of, and this is his words, not mine, a bunch of Jewish old guys with guitars. So that sounds like fun. I wouldn't mind joining that group. I'm going to invite you to join me for the blessing for. I'm sharing my screen. Let's unmute ourselves if you feel comfortable doing so. We'll say our blessing for study and then we'll turn things over to Rabbi Muller. Please join me. Baruch
Baruch
atah
atah
Adonai
Adonai
Eloheinu
Eloheinu
melech
melech
haolam
haolam
asher
asher
kitshanu
kitshanu
b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu
v'tzivanu
la'asok
la'asok
b'divrei
b'divrei
Torah.
Torah.
Blessed is the
Blessed are
Eternal,
you.
whose mitzvot, whose commandments make us holy, and who commands us to immerse, to engage in words of Torah. Rabbi Frank, take it away, please.
All right. Welcome, everyone, and good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. I had the pleasure of teaching a La'asok class last year, and I'm delighted to be back once again. If someone were to ask you what are the primary values of Judaism, you might say, well, Judaism is about justice. Judaism is about hope. Judaism is about compassion. And that might be it, in addition to whatever else you might come up with. But you might be hard pressed to say that Judaism is about love. You might say, well, I've heard before Christianity is about love and Judaism is about law. But that couldn't be further from the truth, because ultimately Judaism is about love. We're going to take a look at a little known text that's not studied very often in the Jewish world, the Song of Songs, Shir HaShirim, because of course every week we read a portion from Torah and we have a portion from the prophets, the Haftarah, but the third section of Tanakh, the Ketuvim, the writings, we really don't read on a regular basis. Song of Songs is read on the Sabbath during Passover. And that's the only time that you're likely to see it. So it's often a text that is missed by the Jewish people. But it is one of the most beautiful texts in all of Scripture. And that's what we're going to take a look at today. Actually, even though Passover has come and gone, there is a special holiday coming up in July. It is known as Tu B'Av, the 15th of Av. Now, you're all familiar with the 9th of Av, Tisha B'Av, but 6 days later, we have this holiday called the Holiday of Love. It's Tu B'Av. So I kind of felt like it was appropriate to discuss Judaism and love today, since it is sandwiched in between Passover and Tu B'Av, the Holiday of Love. So I want to ask, I'll start with a question that I'm not going to answer right away. And you can think about it as we're going through this lesson, and then I'll come back to it at the end. Why do we read the Song of Songs during Passover? As we'll see, it's a story about love. Seemingly on the surface, the love between a man and a woman. What would this have to do with Passover, and why do we read it? You know, the other five Megillot that we read are pretty obvious. On Purim, we read Esther. All right, that makes sense. On Shavuot, we read the book of Ruth, who was the first convert to Judaism and accepted all of Jewish law. On Tisha B'Av, we read Lamentations about the destruction of the temples, and it's a day of mourning, so that makes sense. And even on Sukkot, when we read Ecclesiastes, there's a connection there, because Sukkot is about the fragility of life and how life is very precarious, and that's really the theme of Ecclesiastes. But why do we read the Song of Songs? Why do we read a love story on Passover? So I want you to think about that as we're going through this lesson. So let's take a look, and we're gonna start with chapter 1, verses 1 to 4 of this wonderful book. And I'll tell you that it is, even though it's not very well known in the Jewish world, it has high regard amongst the rabbis of the Talmud and Midrash. And Rabbi Akiva said of the Song of Songs, "For in all the world there is nothing to equal the day on which the Song of Songs was given to Israel. For all the writings are holy, but the Song of Songs is the holy of holies." And it says, "Those who read the Song of Songs for the sake of entertainment, as though it were a profane song, will have no place in the next world." And actually, the way it's voiced in the text, it says, if you sing Song of Songs in a tavern, you will never inherit the Olam Haba, because it's a very serious book with significant themes. All right, let's go right to the text. The Song of Songs by Solomon. "Oh, give me the kisses of your mouth, for your love is more delightful than wine. Your ointments yield a sweet fragrance. Your name is like finest oil. Therefore do maidens love you. Draw me after you, let us run. The king has brought me to his chambers. Let us delight and rejoice in your love, savoring it more than wine." All right. So for centuries, on the surface, this seems to be a story describing the love between a man and a woman. But for a very long time, the sages saw this as a metaphor for the love between God and Israel. And as I mentioned to you, Judaism is ultimately about love. And this text is going to prove that. Think about it. What do we say in the Ve'ahavta? You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. In the service, the Ahava Rabbah, how deeply you have loved us, Adonai. Torah and mitzvot have you given us. This is the core relationship, the love between God and Israel. Except it hasn't always gone smoothly, because human recalcitrance, stubbornness, has caused so often the Israelites to turn to other gods. They abandoned the covenant and the mitzvot, and they disappointed God. Repeatedly, this is a theme of the scripture, how they turned to idol worship and spurned the love that God was giving them. So often in the Bible, God feels let down by Israel. And Jewish history has known many excruciating times when Israel felt that God abandoned them. Well, the Holocaust, for example. So the Song of Songs is a biblical text that vividly speaks of love. But what is the nature of this love? All right. So as I said, for centuries, this text was viewed in allegorical terms. And many, perhaps most pious Jews, interpret it this way, between the love of God, the love between God and Israel. Here's the interesting thing, though. But for modern scholars, this is a story of the passionate and highly erotic love shared by young lovers. And they were skeptical. They have been skeptical, if not scornful, of the God-Israel connection. But in recent years, scholars have accepted both. All right? The love between a man and a woman and the love between God and Israel are not necessarily mutually exclusive. And as we'll see, the Song of Songs contains references and allusions to other biblical texts which seem to point beyond the one to the other. So the book is placed firmly in the context of God's passionate, albeit troubled, relationship with Israel. All right, let's take a look at this first text. I want you to look at the third line from the bottom. It says, "Let us delight and rejoice in your love." Nagila v'nismacha. Those are two very significant words, because there's the verse from Psalms, actually part of the Hallel that we read during the Shalosh Regalim, during Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot. Zeh hayom asa Adonai nagila v'nismacha vo. This is the day that God has made. Let us delight and rejoice in it. Also in Psalm 16, my heart rejoices, my whole being delights, being mindful of God's presence. So these two words, Nagila v'nismacha, and you can see it there in the last line of the Hebrew, delight and rejoice, must refer to the love between God and Israel because it is used in the psalm. So that's kind of an interesting thing to point out to prove that this is a story about the love between God and Israel. All right, let's go to another text. Actually, this is a famous song written by Debbie Friedman decades ago, one of my favorites, Arise, My Love. You might be familiar with it. My beloved spoke thus to me, arise, my darling, my fair one, and come away. For now the winter is past, the rains are over and gone. The blossoms have appeared in the land, the time of pruning has come. The song of the turtle dove is heard in our land. The green figs form on the fig tree, the vines in blossom give off fragrance. Arise, my darling, my fair one, and come away. I often will read this passage when I do weddings, particularly this time of year. But that was one of Debbie Friedman's most well-known songs. I just thought I would point that out to you. Now we're going to go to the next text. All right. This is from chapter 3. Upon my couch at night, I sought the one I love. I sought, but found him not. I must rise and roam the town, through the streets and through the squares. I must seek the one I love. I sought, but found him not. The watchman came upon me while patrolling the town. Have you seen the one I love? Scarcely had I passed them when I found the one I love. I held him fast, I would not let him go, till I brought him to my mother's house, to the chamber of her who conceived me. I adjure you, O maidens of Jerusalem, by gazelles or by hinds of the field, do not wake or rouse love until it please. Who is she that comes up from the desert like columns of smoke, in clouds of myrrh and frankincense, of all the powders of the merchant? Now, let me ask you, what line was repeated several times in this stanza that I just read? What line do you see that's repeated 4 times? Anyone?
I sought.
One I love.
Yes, exactly. I sought the one I love. So that is the key here, because those two words are critical, because it has to do with nafshecha. And if you look in the Hebrew, she'ahava nafshi, you look in the first line, literally the love of my soul. But here's the interesting thing. She'ahava nafshi. Think about the ve'ahavta. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavcha uvchol nafshecha. Uvchol nafshecha. It comes from the same root. So the point here is that the type of love being expressed is the love for God, because of this play on the words. Uvchol nafshecha comes from the same root as nafshi. So I think what's going on here is that there's a connection between these two words, and it must refer to the love of God, the love that's sought by God so intensely to connect with the people of Israel. Now take a look at the last verse. Who is she that comes up from the desert like columns of smoke in clouds of myrrh and frankincense, of all the powders of the merchant? So what is that referring to? Clouds could be an allusion to Israel entering the promised land by a cloud. But why the desert? Most of the allusions in the Song of Songs tend to place lovers in the fields of Jerusalem or in a garden or a forest. Why the wilderness? Because of Israel's 40 years of wandering in the wilderness. So this is therefore a reference to the bride Israel who honeymooned with God in the desert. How do we know this? From Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 2, who said, I accounted to your favor the devotion of your youth, your love as a bride, how you followed me in the wilderness. So there's proof there that this is about Israel and God being lovers and Israel coming up to meet God in the wilderness. So that is a very poignant connection there. And even more interesting, Israel is a sacrificial offering to its God. Who is she that comes up from the desert? Mizot Olah. Olah is the word for burnt offering that's described in the book of Leviticus. So it's as though Israel is a sacrificial offering to God. And it continues like columns of smoke. The sacrifices rose up to God in smoke, in clouds of myrrh and frankincense, spices that were used for the sacrifices. So you have this connection also. So the text can be read on two levels simultaneously. A human lover coming forth from the wilderness to meet her lover, and Israel coming to meet her divine lover in the latter's holy temple as a sacrifice. Okay, let's move on to the next text. And here we come to the most powerful allusion in the Song of Songs. It may seem obscure at first, but it's rich in meaning. I have come to my garden, my own, my bride. I have plucked my myrrh and spice, eaten my honey and honeycomb, drunk my wine and my milk. Eat, lovers, and drink deep of love. I was asleep, but my heart was wakeful. Hark, my beloved knocks. Let me in, my own, my darling, my faultless dove. For my head is drenched with dew, my locks with the damp of night. I had taken off my robe. Was I to don it again? I had bathed my feet. Was I to soil them again? My beloved took his hand off the latch, and my heart was stirred for him. Those last two Hebrew words, hamu, the last three words, sorry, umei hamu, alav, umei hamu. Literally, it means my innards churned. My innards churned for my loved one. And the fascinating thing is, these words are contained in Jeremiah chapter 31, where Jeremiah, and it's one of three verses that's repeated. Well, actually, this verse from Jeremiah appears in the Rosh Hashanah liturgy. Truly, Ephraim, that's a reference to the northern kingdom of ancient Israel. Ephraim is a dear son to me, a child that is dandled. Whenever I have turned against him, my thoughts would dwell on him still. That is why my innards churn for him. I will receive him back in love, declares the Lord. So what are the high holidays about? God takes us back. No matter how much we have transgressed, no matter how much we have erred, God will always take us back in love. But the words here, instead of may I hamu, as we find them in our Song of Songs text, in Jeremiah, they're reversed, and it's hamu may I. So what is this saying? It's saying that for the first time, Israel is reciprocating God's love. It's reversed. It's coming from both sides. Hamu may I, and ume I hamu. And I thought that was a fascinating parallel to show that at times, yes, the relationship is reciprocal, and Israel loves God as much as God loves Israel. So you see that connection right there. For so long, God has loved Israel and yearns for that love to be reciprocated. But time and again, God was forced into the role of jilted lover. But here, finally, something changes. Israel is loving God back. But if you look, Israel doesn't accept God's love. And if you look further in the text, it's not here. Israel pushes God away, and maybe is playing hard to get, whatever. But here, I'll just read it to you very quickly. It's not in the text, but it's interesting to point out. I rose to let in my beloved. My hands dripped myrrh, my fingers flowing myrrh upon the handles of the bolt. I opened the door for my beloved, but my beloved had turned and gone. I was faint because of what he said. I sought, but found him not. I called, but he did not answer. So when God was willing to connect with Israel, Israel spurned God, but then by the time Israel changed her mind, God was gone. And so the whole point is that even during moments of intense mutuality, the song leaves space for the reality that the love between God and Israel is always aspirational and never fully consummated. There's always an air of transience with regard to the lovers' availability to each other. For God to be in a relationship with Israel specifically, and with human beings in general, is to face stubbornness, intransigence, and plain indifference. For Israel, it's facing moments of God's silence and absence and apparent abandonment. And yet, as the song hints, there are moments when the love is so very mutual, reciprocal, and powerful, so very potent and real. Such moments are worth everything, especially when the world and the presence of God within it seems to go dark. And actually, I think it's a kind of a commentary on a marital relationship or any relationship. You know, there's always that intense mutuality, but at times it's not always a smooth path. There can be rocky moments, and I think what this text is trying to tell us is that too many people give up on a relationship too quickly and are not willing to accept the bumps and bruises that are inherent in any relationship. So I think that's why this text is often used in marriage encounter seminars, because of its poignancy in saying that, look, no relationship is perfect. You've got to accept the ups and downs. And I think that's what it's trying to say here. All right. Finally, I want to refer you to one last text. That is this is quoted by Viktor Frankl, of course, Viennese psychiatrist, Holocaust survivor. And during his time in Auschwitz, he had no idea if his wife was alive or not. And he quoted this verse because he had no idea if she had survived or not. Let me be a seal upon your heart, like the seal upon your hand, for love is fierce as death. Passion is mighty as Sheol. Its darts are darts of fire, a blazing flame. Vast floods cannot quench love, nor rivers drown it. If someone offered all his household's wealth for love, he would be laughed to scorn. And I'll just read you a quote. I did not know whether my wife was alive, and I had no means of finding out during all my prison life there. There was no outgoing or incoming mail, but at that moment it ceased to matter. There was no need for me to know. Nothing could touch the strength of my love, my thoughts, and the image of my beloved. Had I known then that my wife was dead, I think that I would still have given myself, undisturbed by that knowledge, to the contemplation of her image, and that my mental conversation with her would have been just as vivid and just as satisfying. So I thought that was very powerful. Also, one additional thing, the Hebrew month Elul, in which we celebrate the High Holy Days, is Aleph, Lamed, Vav, Lamed. And that's an acronym for Ani L'Dodi V'Dodi Li. I am my beloved's and my beloved is mine, one of the most prominent verses in the Song of Songs. The whole idea being that during the month of Elul, we come particularly close to God and we renew our connection to God through that. So that's always quoted as something during the high holidays. Actually, well, Elul is the month prior to the holidays, sorry, but we prepare for Tishri and the holy days. Ani L'Dodi V'Dodi Li. All right, let's go to our question. Why do we read this during Passover? Any ideas?
Frank, I'm going to stop your screen share if that's okay, so that we can see each other and folks can raise your hands is the best way if you have thoughts to share.
Okay.
So let's go to Aviva and Yehuda.
My initial thought was that Passover marks the liberation from Egypt, and there is a command to be fruitful and multiply. And once slavery is behind us, we are fruitful and multiply. And we do it because there's no TV in the desert.
I like that. That's an interesting midrash. All right.
There's a
Any
comment
other?
there's a comment in the chat from Sabrina. She says the love God had for us to redeem us from Egypt is evident in the Song of Songs. So there's a connection between Pesach and Shir Shirim there.
Yeah, I think that's the core of it, is that God redeeming us from Egypt was an act of pure love, and that's a major part of the connection. So, ding, 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 judges, we accept that answer. Very good. Also, the connection of spring. Again, Debbie Frieden's song, "Arise, my love, my fair one, and come away, for lo, the winter is over and past. The flower, turtle dove is heard, flowers appear on the earth." So the idea of springtime, and that's a time of love. So that there's that connection too. But the main idea is that, yes, it was an act of love when God redeemed us from slavery in Egypt. Very good. Excellent. All right. Any comments or questions? We got a couple of minutes left. Any of the text we covered, or?
I have a question about Judaism as a religion of love. It was a beautiful presentation you offered. I was wondering if you might comment on how Judaism lost its connection to love over the centuries, and how we can restore it, if this is an attempt to restore this understanding of Judaism as a religion of love.
Yes, good question. I think it was centuries of Christian polemic that Christianity supplanted Judaism as a religion of love, because Judaism was stringently based on law and overly legalistic, and that there was no place for Judaism in love. So to some extent, I think that was a canard of religious anti-Semitism that unfortunately has been perpetuated until this day. But really, what opened up my thinking about Judaism as a religion of love is this incredible book by Shai Held, and it's called Judaism is About Love. It's a very scholarly work, excellent work, but he makes an undisputable case for the preeminent value of Judaism is love. And the way he describes it is in concentric circles. We have to start with love of the self, which then extends to our families, then to our communities, then to the wider world. And he even makes a case for love of enemies, and finally love of all humanity, leading up to love of God. It's an incredible book, and I highly recommend it if you're interested in pursuing this idea of Judaism is about love.
So we have one more comment, and I think time for one more comment, which is from John.
Well, I had a couple thoughts. I'll mention them briefly. Well, one was of Shabbat Shira. After we crossed the Sea of Reeds, we celebrated, or the women did, with dance and song. It's a very celebratory time. And then the other thought I had was, how often does the word ahava appear in text? I think it's there a lot. Am I?
That's something we could easily look up in a Hebrew concordance, but I think you're right. I mean, the word is present in Scripture pretty frequently, which would only add to the case that love is a significant part of the Jewish faith.
So let me say a huge thank you to Rabbi Frank Muller for teaching us today. And really an interesting and somewhat different topic, and a different text than the ones that we're used to looking at. Um, I just wanted to add one last thought, which was the connection with Passover, that Passover is not only backwards looking, it doesn't only look toward the Exodus from Egypt as having been an act of love, but Pesach is also forward looking to future redemption, what we call Tikkun Olam, the repair of the world, which is also, I think, seen as an act of God's love and an act perhaps of our love, and showing love for the divine and showing love for the the fellow beings with whom we share this world. And perhaps that's another connection to make as well.
And
Um,
just one final thought. Tu B'Av, the holiday of love, is July 29th. So do something special for the one you love and tell them about that holiday.
My birthday.
there we go. Everybody go make your Tu B'Av plans. Um, we are meeting again next week. I'll be teaching next week, and our topic is called Hope for the Journey. That will be our last Tikva through text for a little while. We're going to take the month of July off, but don't go anywhere because we will come back in August and continue this discussion. So I look forward to seeing all of you again next Thursday. Thanks again to Rabbi Frank Muller, and Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.